Macy's has all of your Grill Master essentials for Father's Day. Stop by to get our hand-trimmed chicken breast and certified Angus beef patties that are ready to grill, so Dad can have his favorite dinner. Make sure to browse our bakery to find the perfect no-work Father's Day treat with our decadent peanut butter bars or famous donuts. Right now, you can get boneless beef ribeye steaks for $12.99 per pound at Macy's. Shop these Father's Day essentials in-store or online at Macys.com through June 18th. Macy's, happy shopping!
Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. We're your hosts. I'm Mark Kashman, Senior Product Manager on the SharePoint Marketing team here at Microsoft, and I'm joined with
Bill Baer, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive team.
And we are live, literally super live today in the Expo Hall from the SharePoint Conference North America in Las Vegas, hashtag SPC18. So every year we look forward to the SharePoint Conference. We try to do some big disclosure moments twice a year, and we're really excited to have, obviously, a time where we can share at the SharePoint Conference North America. And really what it means to us is we get a chance to come and share and disclose a lot of what we're doing so people can mindfully plan and think about the future and what they're going to do with SharePoint. But the most exciting thing for me is to reconnect with a lot of people that I know and to meet a lot of people that I've never met. But we have this same common experience of meeting them for the first time, hearing their feedback, and really getting to know them. And it's super exhilarating, very illuminating, and it's a wonderful event to really get to know a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that care about SharePoint, or at least are interested enough to come dedicate a couple of days to go deep on sessions, workshops, ask their questions, hear what we have to say, and of course, always providing that feedback. So we asked some of the attendees what they were excited about with this year's conference.
Clinton Person. I'm representing Asurian. We're based in Nashville. So I'm here to learn a little more about SharePoint Server 2019. I was excited to hear that there were going to be some announcements around that. I'm also looking for some development opportunities using Microsoft Graph and kind of integrating the SharePoint framework with Office Online, O365, and some of the newer versions of SharePoint on-prem.
Hi, my name is Michelle Todd and I work for Unily. We are based out of the UK, but we have offices in Seattle and New York, and we do intranet in a box. I think that for us as an ISV, we're always looking for the latest and greatest on the roadmap and whether they're going to make any new releases from an API perspective on how we can integrate Unily with SharePoint and Yammer and all the other products for our customers.
David Drinkwine. I'm from New York. I'm here representing Slalom Consulting. The stuff I'm particularly interested in is the new features and functionality around Office 365 groups and teams. This is a huge growth area for us in New York, and we're finding that it's a lot easier to use and a lot smarter a collaborative platform than we've seen in a long time. I think it's going to change the way a lot of people work. It's a culture change more than a technology change.
Only day one, so let's really recap day one. We want to get the mood of what everything is. We're going to cover the news and announcements. But for me, every year I look forward to the SharePoint Conference. It's a great time to obviously share news and announcements, but it's also a great time to connect with people, both new and old. What for you is sort of the SharePoint Conference in a nutshell?
It's been less than 8 hours at the SharePoint Conference, but it has seemed like it's been a week. We've had so many announcements, so many exciting new things from our customers on premises with SharePoint 2019 to our visionary customers with SharePoint Spaces and beyond. So directionally, there's just so many things for people to do. They can create via our mixed reality environments we have here available for them. They can connect with attendees, such as here at the Expo Hall. And then the best part about it is just the collaboration, as you mentioned. You have new people to the community, people who have been staples of the community. So it's just great to be able to network and bring the family together again in Las Vegas.
Getting into now with announcements being released, exhale a little bit. You mentioned SharePoint Spaces. I was a little, I was very much anticipating what was going to be the reaction. SharePoint plus 3 dimensions? What?
I think the reaction was great, and I think the reaction came from the simplicity of SharePoint Spaces. If you think about mixed reality in the past, in order to dive into mixed reality, you had to have a fundamental understanding of things like Unity, Babylon.js, spatial mapping technologies. And what we did today is let people know, hey, you've already got 2-dimensional content in SharePoint. simply create three-dimensional content with a few clicks. And we've made it so simple. Just like SharePoint's designed to be simple, mixed reality has now been democratized for everyone to take advantage of.
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of blew me away when I saw it for the first time. And I hope that would really convey beyond, what our thoughts were. And it really was, I think, a nice set of demos, real clear around how you would use it. You can engage with or without a headset. When you put on the headset, of course, you're then in the third dimension, and you're really engaging with content. If you don't have a headset, you can still engage with the content in a really nice visual way.
Yeah, it's that idea of surrounding yourself with information. So it's amazing. You can actually immerse yourself in the content that you create versus just see it in two dimensions. So it's almost to the way I like to think about it is you're exercising a completely different set of senses when you can visualize information.
Yeah, on any device. And that doesn't necessarily mean on the Vive, on the other headsets, on my PC. It actually go all the way down into the mobile device. They're building this new immersive, engaging mixed reality experience that can also translate down into somebody taking advantage of it on their mobile device.
Yeah, mobile is the one thing I like to talk about. I mean, it's just so ubiquitous. The first thing people pick up when they wake up is their phone, and the last thing they lay down when they go to bed is their phone.
Let's talk about mobile for a little bit. We had a really big announcement for how they're redesigning the SharePoint mobile experience, and they highlighted one of the things, which is called the Find tab. So with the Find tab, it really combines a number of things, your sites, your links, and of course search. But then they really layer in AI. So the engineering team has been pretty hard at work on how to make your life easier. Go to the Find tab, get quick answers, see the content that's revolving around you, and get to that work and productivity while you're on the go much more quickly. Any thoughts on the Find tab?
Yeah, I think with the Find tab, one of the things about it is we talk a lot about intelligence. We talk about the intersection of intelligence and security, driving the intelligent security graph, advanced threat protection, advanced data governance, intelligent e-discovery. But really, intelligence becomes real when it helps you discover contextually relevant information. I always like to think of finding information as there's this concept of recovery, which is Mark authors a query and continues to add keywords and refiners and facets to that query to find what Mark needs. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, where we're at today, discovery is just amazing because it can understand Mark and bring Mark the information that matters most when you need it the most.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when you think of it coming all the way down to your mobile device, powered by that significant engine of discovery in the cloud, and the ease of which they've designed it, I think they've done a really nice job, and it was really nice to get that out there as far as what's coming on the mobile device.
Yeah, absolutely. I could have used it for a couple of meetings today.
So let's switch a little context. In terms of sharing and working together, there's a lot of things that they mentioned. I'm just going to highlight a few. When you're on Office.com, you now see the power of AI in servicing up recent documents, recent sites, a lot of the recent activities flowing right through Office.com, and you have that same rich files experience now that you have in libraries in SharePoint, now coming through in Teams. One of the things you can do, obviously, when you're working with Office documents, you can put comments on those documents. Now, like you can do in an Outlook email, you can @mention in comments, and people will be notified of when those things are happening. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting that we shared there is two things that I thought was maybe a little bit of a surprise, at least where I remembered hearing a lot of the claps, which sort of tells us, I think we're doing a few things right. One of them was Files on Demand in SharePoint Server 2019. Were you a little surprised about just the reaction, Files on Demand, SharePoint Server 2019?
To a certain extent, it's always interesting to see how many people still have a passion for on-premises versions of SharePoint, particularly with so many investments in the cloud and so much that we're doing. Following SharePoint Spaces, of course, is always going to be a difficult task when you announce something that new and that innovative, and you follow with our server product. But what we've been able to determine is really for our customers on premises, they're looking for that opportunity to get a better sync client and take advantage of a better sync experience. And Files on Demand is truly that better sync experience, particularly when you see devices have less and less storage these days.
The other thing that got kind of a bigger clap that I wasn't expecting, I knew that people would like the feature, was the OneDrive for Business camera backup. As simple as that sounds, the ability for be able to have automated all of their photos backed up into the cloud, but whether it's consumer or commercial, now they have the option, if it's a work phone, to be able to bring in those photos, have them backed up to OneDrive, and then of course once they're in OneDrive, they're searchable, they're shareable, and on top of that, people were really surprised maybe, but also delighted to know that once you've got all of your images, like a receipt, we do a lot of things that we're extracting the text that was on the receipt. Maybe you can talk a little bit, or AI comes in from the context around content extraction, entity extraction, and flowing into some of our search announcements.
Yeah, I think that's a critical investment. It's definitely a useful investment. A great example of which is we're both here at the SharePoint Conference in Las Vegas as both attendees as well as speakers and organizing the event itself. So there's always an opportunity to take a picture of a receipt. And when you take pictures of a receipt, you store them in your personal photo file. Eventually, after time to clear space, you start deleting them, and the next thing you know, you need it. And discovery can be difficult. At an event like this, your personal camera roll will balloon into hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures that you've taken with attendees and of the event itself. And it's difficult to discover. By taking that important business information, meeting invitations, receipts, business cards, and being able to bring those into OneDrive for Business and yet extract all the pertinent details from those to make them discoverable, it's invaluable in how it can save you time in locating information.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of things that when you input content into SharePoint, we do a lot of things for you. And one of the things that they talked about is once content is in, and obviously you're able to do it, is to then turn that into something that maybe admins have been wanting to do for a while, which is even further refine the search experience. So we talked a little bit about the search results page being extensible, some of the ways that you can bring in the entities, custom entities, some of the things that Naomi showed on stage as far as in the context of harnessing collective knowledge, being able to then further manage and extend that. A lot of times people have given us a lot of big feedback. Hey, there's a new search experience, it's personalized, it's driven by the graph, but I still want to extend it. I still need to do something to make it meaningful to my end users. So I know you have sort of two hats that you can wear, IT and developer. What does that mean for developers to be able to extend the search experience?
I think for developers, it's a huge win. It's one of the last bastions of SharePoint, per se, that developers have always wanted an opportunity to manipulate and instrument. So by opening it up and giving them the endpoints to be able to do so, it provides a wealth of opportunity. If you think about the intelligence we've already infused into search, type ahead, contextual search, our early investments in Office Graph and Delve, one of the first questions is when can I extend that? When can I add my own business logic? When can I personalize that to where it makes the most sense to my organization? So now they can take information, and it's already intelligent by virtue of the graph, but then they can really target a specific audience within the organization with an existing intelligent set of recommendations and results. So the value is there.
Yeah, I think I heard a collective yes from people that obviously want to drive a more dynamic experience. You can do that with search, and when you can refine that and make it extensible the way that you want to drive it, I think that is going to bring a lot of intranets to life in ways that our customers want, not just to what we give them out of the box, but to refine really what it is that they want, especially in the modern world, to be able to extend it, is something where they just haven't been able to do it for now.
Absolutely.
Yep. Chris showed us a lot. Chris McNulty, who is one of our peers, another senior product manager, he was up on stage, and I think he sort of termed in quotes, his whole demo was the year of lists, and how lists are going to be really over the top and things that we can do. And of course, a lot of what lists do with Power Apps and Flow. So maybe just share a little bit. I think the thing that got the biggest claps that I was a little surprised, not from the feature itself, but I just didn't see it coming, was the ability to copy out of an Excel file and paste directly into a list, and not only have the content carry over, but to have the columns land intact. So were you surprised maybe when you saw that and to hear the reaction from everybody?
I think there was a slight bit of surprise, but at the same time, we've come to recognize that the foundation of SharePoint is the list itself. A list is a table, and SharePoint is built on top of tables. So really, SharePoint's history began with a list. So people have a relationship with lists just by virtue of the product having its foundation founded in the concept of a list itself. So really, as SharePoint grew, lists and lists became more of how people manage their business and manage their content inside of SharePoint. So when it comes to the ability to copy and paste from Excel, if you think about some of the past solutions we had as related to lists in Excel, it was export to Excel, which required an ActiveX control, which required Internet Explorer. So it really wasn't that open in respect to how many people could take advantage of the ability to work with lists in Excel cohesively. So what Chris was able to demonstrate is now you can take that workbook that you've been working on, the finance workbook for the last 6 months, and you can bring it into SharePoint immediately and preserve everything from the workbook itself versus copying cell by cell. And most of it isn't necessarily the technology that's wowing them, it's the amount of time they realize that they're going to be able to save.
I think the democratization of just how you get things done in SharePoint is something that is a big emphasis of how the team is building it out, connecting to tools that are as familiar as any other with Excel. He talked about how you can bring in lists from other lists, you can bring in a number of different ways, but Excel was one of the ones I think it really landed and really showcased the ease of how lists can be not only populated, but then further worked with, used, shared, added to. And I think they've been really working on that refined user experience with something as core as lists.
Yeah.
So let's move a little bit over to an inform and engage. So a little bit of a broader category, and really a lot of the news around here centered around what we're doing with organizational news. Mm-hmm. So for a while we've had team news. So if you think bottoms up news, I'm sharing with you, right. You share something with the rest of the team, and we get that automatically that flows through our SharePoint Home into our mobile app. But that's a little bit more organic from the bottom up. If you think about from a top down, we started to add some features within what I think of as the news service all up. So news service, we started with team news. Now with organizational news, you'll be able to better manage your pages. That could start with just simple approval. Hey, before this gets published, I want to make sure that my manager's okay with what my news article looks like before it goes out to more of the masses, because now we're talking about to everybody. And it could be a centralized team within their marketing department or within HR that's going to publish the news, but it goes through some workflow or process.
Right.
They can also tag their pages now so that they can better organize, and once something has more metadata applied to it, they can make it visible to people in a more targeted fashion. So we talked about audience targeting. So again, putting maybe now your IT hat on, I bet in the past with SharePoint, people have been building these things, and maybe it took them a number of months to even build out a news service that would do some of these similar things. But now out of the box with organizational news coming, and of course how it applies to just pages, news being a page type, talk about in the context of, in the past, how long would it have taken to build something of a similar nature now will be offered out of the box in Office 365?
Yeah, I think building it was an arduous task, figuring out the right way to actually disseminate news across the organization to inform and engage individuals within the organization itself. But one of the challenges has always been, from an IT perspective, a developer will go out and compose some code. Maybe it takes several months for them to be able to do so, to deliver this concept of organizational news. IT is always reluctant to deploy that. IT would rather maintain status quo and keep SharePoint the way that it is. Their job is to keep SharePoint alive, and the more gears you start to add into the machine, the more complex the machine begins to be, and the harder and harder it becomes to troubleshoot it, which drives up the operational costs and the time that you have to spend in order to do so. Even though the feature itself that the developer built had extreme value to communicating broadly, in a sense, across the organization, at the same time, the cost that they incurred trying to manage it was difficult. So I think what we announced today with organizational news, with tagging, and the ability to add taxonomy, multi-disposition workflows, and everything that comes along with it, it's really going to be great for IT professionals, because IT professionals realize the value, but they also realize that they have to maintain an environment that's available for everybody at any time on any device.
Yep. And like before, this same approach where IT might just really want to stand it up, put it in place, give the business what they need, but then the business needs to then take it from there and make it their own. So all of these things that you mentioned with metadata, workflow, with some of the audience targeting, that's all extensible in the context of you build in your own, who are you going to target? What flow? Maybe you want to customize the flow. That's very easy to do these days. And all the principles with flow, connecting to pages, comes to news, and it certainly is going to work that same way. The other area around Inform and Engage, we talked about hub sites and communication sites. And I thought one of the things that was just going to be fun to talk about, that almost every communication site at some level always builds themselves, is the weather web part. Were you excited for the weather web part?
Actually, I am excited for the weather web part. So for the longest time in our own intranet, we had a weather web part. And that weather web part was retired for a period of time, which was very disappointing. It seems so benign to be able to look at the weather when you can navigate to a weather website or you can look at it on your phone. But when it's front and center and it's prominent alongside of your information, it's just one less context switch that you have to do in the course of business.
So not to spend too much time on the weather web part, but I think it's an important thing that maybe we haven't done for a little bit, and now it's coming.
Yeah, I would say in the way that we're blending the physical and virtual divide with SharePoint Spaces, we're blending the business and personal divide with the weather web parts. So the more that you can do that, the more engaged people become.
So last thing in that area, we talked about some new things coming for hub sites. A lot of it was more from an IT perspective. When somebody has a site that they want to join to your hub site, now they can run site scripts. So certain things happen to that site automatically, and that they apply essentially to the governance that that person who owns the hub site wants to have applied to every site that joins their hub site.
Right.
The other thing we talked about was just general approval. So now when people join a hub site, if they can, they certainly will be let right in, but if they're requesting access to be able to join a site, there's now a simple approval process that can be put in place so that somebody can say yes or no. And if it's a no, then you won't have a site that automatically joins and shows up. But if you say yes, it automatically comes in, a site script might take form, and a lot of things happen to the site, to conform to the governance of what those people who own that hub site want to have happen to it. So 2 more areas, and I think, again, these are square in your, let's put on now your developer hat again. But we had Vesa up on stage, Vesa Jehovanen, and he talked a lot about what we're doing with the SharePoint framework. And to be frank, it's the first time in a number of SharePoint conferences where we actually demoed the developer aspects of SharePoint.
Right.
And so we've had a lot of innovation in this space, but to give it some of the airtime, that was some of the biggest feedback. Great features, but the biggest feedback was, I love that you actually showed a developer demo. So talk a little bit about maybe what Vesa shared with us with some of the new extensions capabilities, some of the Active Directory integrations, Teams integration. But with your developer hat on, you can speak to speak. So let's hear it from the developer's perspective.
I think what Vesa showed today, and one of the things that we've come to learn is through our investments in the SharePoint framework, all the way back to when we made it generally available to February 23rd ago, one of the biggest things about that is we were really, much as we've democratized mixed reality, we're democratizing development as well. So SharePoint had long been accused of being a black box, very proprietary. You had to have a lot of experience and passion to be able to develop against the solutions that we had available. And through our investments in the SharePoint framework, what we've been able to do is align to modern web standards. So you don't have to be somebody who's familiar with SharePoint anymore. You have to be somebody who's familiar with JavaScript, which is an ever-growing portion of developers across the world. So what we've been able to do and recognize, and through Vesa's discussion this morning, is we've been really able to reach a broad audience and talk to something that they care about, because now we're bringing extensibility to them versus bringing them to us. So there's a lot of opportunity, obviously, in the space, particularly around identity. It's one of the biggest questions that we get. People want to augment user profiles, and they want to deliver a rich people profile experience. So directory is kind of that core component that you need to be able to instrument and tie into to be able to take care of that.
So democratizing for developers to be able to not only do things a little bit more easily without a SharePoint PhD, but to be able to do it actually in the cloud. A lot of people have thought, the cloud is not yet mature. And I think if you look at what the team is doing, especially with the announcements here at the show this week, I think they'll get a really good, clear indication that this is not an environment where we don't want you to do work. We want you to be able to extend.
Right.
And extend in ways that are both future-proof and also performant, where a lot of these new experiences, as you build them with the SharePoint framework, are really nice experiences with a lot less code that you have to write to make it a good experience for the end user. So switching hats, last topic as far as all the announcements, protect and manage. And this is not just you standing there with a big bully club and making sure that nobody gets out of hand here at the SharePoint conference. But talk a little bit about what Navjot showed. So Navjot Virk on the SharePoint engineering team got up and really talked about, I think, 4 main things. The SharePoint Admin Center, multi-geo, GDPR, which, by the way, is just a couple days away, and we're ready for it. And a lot of what we're doing around the migration tool and the ability to restore.
Right.
So some of these things you manage directly, so definitely this is something I'd love to get your take on.
Well, this is one of my favorite topics, and at times it's the one that often feels underserved, just because from a security perspective, it's a very limited audience who really has a deep passion for security. In most cases, most people have a deep passion for what they can see. That becomes what's tangible: hub sites, communication sites, team news, and everything that's tangible because they can see it, they can feel it, they can work with it. But security is fundamental to everything that we do. So even on that front end, all the nice work that we do is backed by enterprise-grade security, and we have a long history at Microsoft in developing some of the most innovative security solutions. So Navjot today some of the most important things that kind of tie together and have a relationship is, as you mentioned, GDPR is a new era in privacy that begins on Friday. Multi-geo is one of those first steps that can really help you on your GDPR journey. It can help you from a data sovereignty perspective. So it pulls together the concept of a single tenancy with multiple data locations. So now for an organization like Contoso Travel, our favorite organization,
totally multi-geo.
They're doing really well these days. They can expand from the US into Korea, into Europe, the Middle East, Asia, into other geographic locations and assign employees there, but they can maintain that data sovereignty and protect the data within those corporate or within that geographic's boundaries. So that really helps customers address those government and regulatory compliance issues that they may face in various geographics without having to have separate tenancies. They can do this under the umbrella of a single tenant. So that's super exciting for me. On the migration side, I think that is definitely another exciting space. It ties itself into security. We've invested so much to build such a secure environment to help you take advantage of GDPR on day one, to help you take advantage of data sovereignty, to protect yourself against unmanaged devices and kiosks, to prevent malware, to be able to restore from ransomware. But we also need you to be able to take advantage of all these capabilities, and that's where migration comes in. We want to make it super easy for you to be able to get from on-premises to Office 365 from a self-service perspective at low cost. So we're trying to remove all of those barriers to entry to Office 365 so you can take advantage of some of the best security in the world.
And everything that you've talked about in terms of actually being able to configure and take advantage of it is a lot of the new user interface that's coming to the SharePoint Online Admin Center for people to be able to go in, configure, make choices to obviously further protect and manage what it is they're doing. And that's gotten a really nice update where I think people are not only seeing all of their sites, but now seeing a lot of new functionality, and that's where it's flowing to a really nice updated admin experience. So because we shared a lot of thoughts that we had on the announcements and are hopefully recapping it here for people that weren't able to attend, or as a recap even if you were able to attend, we wanted to make sure to get people's thoughts about the keynote announcements, and we met with some people as they were leaving the keynote, and here's what they had to say.
My name's Lucas Shearer. I live in Calgary, Alberta. So the keynote, the main things that I took away from that I really enjoyed were where they're going with modern sites and the sorts of features that are going to come with O365 right out of the box. Really interested in the developments that they're making with the SharePoint mobile app. And then I really liked the direction they're going with continuing with SharePoint as a bit of a platform for development, the developments with SharePoint framework, particularly how you're able now, it appeared to deploy features across your intranet on SharePoint as well as Microsoft Teams, for example, using the very same web parts. So that's something that's really interesting, and we're going to take a look at that for our product.
Yeah, so it's Jeremy Thake, Hyperfish. Twitter handle is @jthake. So from the keynote, obviously there was a lot to cover, and you could see that everyone on stage was really proud of what they've achieved. And I think that's a big part of this engineering team and the marketing team behind it, is that they really, really love what they do. For me, I think the major takeaway was the search stuff, which I think they kind of spit over a little bit, but it's more of this case that most organizations find it very hard to find information. And now with the intelligent search across SharePoint and across Teams and across Office and everywhere else, it makes a really big deal that you can kind of plug in, I want to find out about a refund, and no matter what search box I'm in across any part of the product set, I can get those responses back. And I think that's kind of a real key business problem. And I think primarily for Hyperfish, which is where it really helps out, is that a lot of those results are based on you as an individual and your profile information to personalize the results. And so for us, it's kind of great and exciting that search is such a big key part of it, but also that profiles are really important as well as part of that result set that comes back.
My name is Dean Swan. I'm with Unlimited Viz, the makers of tyGraph, and I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. You're going to hear a lot about SharePoint Spaces, and as cool as that is, and you certainly see the applicability now and in the future, things like what Jeff told us about the SharePoint list and all the presenters about SharePoint lists. I think those kinds of things are very important to the community, even though they're not sexy like SharePoint Spaces. And I think we need to keep a balance of, the flash and the foundation. And I think that's really important. And I heard that message very clearly today. The other thing I really liked about the keynote is more from a process perspective. Jeff's ability to pause the conversation long enough to say, okay, you just saw this really cool thing. Now let me tell you, your calls to actions are this, this, and this. And I thought that was really super helpful.
So you had a session today that was something that I think a lot of people were really excited to go to. I hope that it was really well attended. I didn't get to attend it, but I know that probably the room was really packed. You had a session that covered, for the first time, what was new for SharePoint Server 2019. This is a first look. So I know we've got a preview coming in summer of this summer, 2018, with the release intended for fall 2018. But besides timing, how did it go? What were things that people resonated with them? What did you share?
I would say what resonated with the audience in respect to the session we gave on SharePoint Server 2019, obviously our first public disclosure, the two things that generated the most applause were communication sites and mobile. The ability to create a communication site on premises and engage your organization, but also have a beautiful experience on a mobile device really resonated with the audience. Team News was another aspect that they really enjoyed. So much smaller in respect communications, so very targeted communications within the context of a team. They really saw the value in being able to have Team News. And then obviously the big things that generated a lot of excitement were modernizing the team site experience, inclusive of lists and libraries, and you can have your comm site as your root site.
Hey, ooh, that's a really nice feature. I wonder if that's something that's indicative of something to come into the future.
I wonder.
We will see. So pretty amazing. SharePoint Server 2019 alive and kicking, coming soon to beta, and I think a lot of great features, which might be a surprise that it is feature rich. It's not just a pass on of, yes, we're keeping it alive barely, but no, a lot of new innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of things that people can take advantage of.
So in addition to pulling down the modern user experiences, communication sites, improvement in mobile, and bringing those back to on-premises to drive a better user experience, it's mobile, responsive, and fast and friendly. We're also making a ton of investments in the developer experiences. So not only do you have SharePoint Framework, but now you have client-side extensions available to you in 2019. Really good investment for the developer audience that we just talked about. And then at the same time, a ton of IT professional advancements as well. So we're taking advantage of the latest IS APIs and doing a number of things that the IT professionals will find valuable for SharePoint as well. So it's not just taking SharePoint Server 2019 or 2016 and adding a new moniker at the end. It's really bringing them a modern server, feature-rich, full of new stuff.
Yeah, I hope that landed. It sounded like it did, because I think it's really great to see the team to continue to invest both on-premises and online in a meaningful way where there's a lot of motions to move to the cloud, and it's not just because Microsoft is not allowing me to do X or Y on-premises. But the reality is sometimes it takes a little bit to get to on-premises, but by nature of how people deploy and use, that shouldn't come as such a surprise. So hopefully you got a lot of claps, a lot of attendance, and a lot of people that were really surprised maybe with some of the things that you shared.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that we want to share is no matter where you're at in your journey to Office 365, we're here to help you. Whether you're on-premises, somewhere in between with hybrid, or fully in the cloud, we're going to be here to support you and give you the latest and greatest tools.
Yep, and to be honest, I think we've been saying that for a number of years, and SharePoint Server hasn't gone away. It's an important part of the business, so it's really great to share for the first time what is in this new server release. So let's turn to looking at day 2. We're on day 1. We're at the Expo Hall tonight in the exhibitors reception, and but certainly day 2 is to come. What are we looking at?
Day 2 is going to be incredibly exciting as well. So day 2 obviously doesn't feature a keynote, but at the same time, we've lined up a great set of sessions to really complement everything that we covered in day 1. So day 2, you're going to dive deeper into some of the aspects of security. You're going to dive deeper into some of the aspects of intelligence. You're going to dive deeper into some of the aspects of mixed reality. So really day 2 is designed to help you understand at a deeper level the fundamentals that we shared on day 1. So day 2 is definitely going to be an exciting day. It's going to help you on your journey towards learning more and more about our investments as we move forward. So definitely recommend it for everybody.
There's two things that I think are kind of unique that people might be a little bit surprised about that are happening here at the conference. One is the evening event. Again, we'll get to that. The other one that I was really interested in and getting a lot of great feedback, I talked to Heather, one of our partners, and she was telling us some amazing things about what she's got planned in the diversity and inclusion event. Can you talk a little bit about what those offerings are and really what part of the conference it supports?
Yeah, so diversity inclusion was something that I was deeply involved in, have a deep passion for, to ensure that happened at this event. And the sessions themselves are great. We have a diverse set of speakers that represent all kinds of different backgrounds. One of my favorite sessions actually that is tomorrow is Motherhood and Tech. So it is actually an excellent session, and it's balancing the idea of being a mom with the idea of working full-time in technology. So it's a really interesting session. It's a very compelling session. I definitely encourage everybody, even fathers, to attend it, just to learn about some of the challenges that come along with raising children as well as building a career in technology. So it's definitely something that I have a passion for. It's a great track. We're one of the first conferences to pull together an entire track dedicated to diversity and inclusion. So
yeah, the speaker lineup is amazing for that track. And I just love that the topics where, you can listen to and talk tech for X number of hours. But when it comes to more of that balance between work and life and how can some of what you do in tech maybe be balanced more, I think the approach that they're taking not only to be inclusive of across genders, across race, across regions, but they're really going in and tackling what is it like to be a certain type of person in tech, not just a robot that's going to go to work and do lots of things, but actually have a life and balance it.
Right.
So I was really pleased that we did that, and it's really great to see the people who've taken it and run with it. So last thing, tomorrow night, maybe there's some rock lobsters happening, maybe there's some dancing, maybe there's some poolside swinging.
Pulling together an event is always a fun endeavor. It has its ups and downs, but I would say one of the most exciting things about pulling together this event in particular was securing the B-52s to provide a poolside beach party for us here at the MGM Grand. So as you mentioned, we're going to have a Burgers and Brews beach party by the world's greatest party band, the B-52s. It's going to be an incredibly exciting time. We also have an incredible fireworks show to follow the B-52s here at the MGM. So we really want to celebrate community. So the idea of bringing in the B-52s, the idea of a fireworks show, and just getting the community together is exactly that. It's about pulling together that SharePoint community and saying a collective thank you from the SharePoint OneDrive team.
So the other thing that I thought was fun that we brought back was the SharePoint Monkey.
Yes.
And I know you were directly involved with that. But it's really great. Not only are we, the SharePoint Monkey is part of our swag giveaway, but there's a lot of great things here in the expo hall. Of course, it's best, go get some swag, talk to the partners, learn about what they're doing. But the monkey is back. How many monkeys did you get?
We brought to Las Vegas 10,000 monkeys.
10,000?
So we have 10,000 monkeys in attendance, along with our thousands of attendees here in Las Vegas. I think the SharePoint conferences, people have an emotional attachment to the SharePoint conference. When we did our last SharePoint conference, there was a collective sigh that it wasn't coming back the following year. So really what we endeavored to do was to try to bring it back and attach to some of those emotional bonds. And of course, we love the monkey. So we decided to let the monkey arrive here at the SharePoint conference. And unfortunately, the monkey has popped up at several sessions, including mine. But it's definitely a nice break as you're standing on stage and you hear a SharePoint monkey scream. You can only help but smile inside.
All right, well, we are at the tail end here of the exhibitor hall and at the tail end of SPC Recap Live. Sure. Bill, thanks for coming and joining. Definitely thank you for everything you've done for the conference. I think people may or may not know all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this conference. And I know firsthand, seeing you and knowing how much you've been putting into it. So thanks for coming by. Thanks for sharing all of your insights about all the announcements, and good luck on day 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, Mark.
So if you want to catch up with everything that's been going on here at the conference, beyond this podcast, beyond everything that you see, we just released a number of blogs today on the tech community. Those are all the depth blogs. And we also have a blog on blogs.office.com just go and look for SharePoint. We'll put a link in the show notes that takes you right to all of those blogs. Read them, provide feedback, ask questions and comments, but hopefully you feel connected with what's going on here with all the disclosures, all the action, all the activity. Thanks for your time today listening. Have a great rest of your day with whatever you're doing. This has been the Intrazone, a SharePoint podcast about your intelligent intranet. Have a great day.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on November 5th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.